Hello, everyone, and welcome to our September DealerOn webinar. It is officially fall here in the Pacific Northwest where I am, and I am freezing already. So if you see me pull up my blanket on my lap, no, you didn't. I literally put away the air conditioner unit this morning and got my space heater out. So things change quickly around here. But one thing that will never change is how much I love being here with everyone for these webinars. See what I did there? Thank you so much for joining today. My name is Erin Zaborac. I am your host and the Director of Marketing for DealerOn. We have two of my smartest friends joining me today, Director Product Manager Michael Admire and Senior Director of Product Management, Data and Apps, Angie Cordova. So Admire, Angie, welcome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Erin. Yeah, excited to be here.
Happy to be here.
Excited too. Yes, you two are some extremely smart nerds, which anyone who knows me knows that I mean that as the highest of compliments. So
She
thank
does.
you
She
for
does.
being here.
You're not wrong. Nerd is accurate.
There you go. Perfect. Okay. I see people joining. Let's cover a few logistics before we get started. We are recording the training today, and we will send you both the deck and the recording after the webinar later today. You should see that Q&A section here in Zoom. I'm going to be hanging out in there and responding throughout the webinar. With today's content, it is very technical, and I'm going to do my best to keep up, but this is a topic that you're going to have questions on. So ask as we go. Don't wait till the end. If you have the question, I'm confident somebody else does too. So ask away. All right, you know what? With that, we got a lot of content today. So let's get right into it. Site speed and core web vitals. These are the kind of topics where it seems like there's a ton of information out there, but it can be a little confusing about what is true. What should I care about? What's just noise? And especially in the automotive space where everything we do is just a little bit special and different when it comes to digital marketing. How do I impact it? Well, why do you think I brought my favorite nerds here to talk to you today? We're going to take you through some definitions, how to read those Google tests, and we're really going to talk about the difference between a pass and a fail and what really matters. So, Admire, I think you're going to kick it off with some stats for the group. Why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure thing. Thanks. Yeah, so just to kind of kick off why we care about site performance, some stats from a fairly recent Deloitte study showed that a 1/10 of a second decrease, so a 0.1% or 0.1 rather second decrease in mobile load time had pretty big impacts on conversions across, I think that was around 40 sites. It was like 37, 38 sites. They did not have any automotive sites, unfortunately, but pulling some stats out, 8.4% increase in conversions on retail sites, 10% increase in conversion on travel sites, and 8.6 increase in page views per sessions on luxury sites. So the takeaway there, again, no automotive, but this is true and critical even kind of across industries. A small improvement in load time can have pretty serious impacts on those kind of end performance numbers. So that's kind of a piece on speed. However, or kind of in addition to that, I guess, for this session, I want to have everybody think about the difference between speed and performance. I've already done this once. I'm going to do this probably throughout this. I think we all will. We tend to use the words speed and performance interchangeably to just mean how fast does the page load. But there is a difference here, right? So site speed is how quickly does the page load. Site performance is a lot more than that, right? It's all about the end user's experience, and that is the ultimate goal of pretty much any web page, right? So the metrics that you're looking at, the numbers that you're seeing, those are proxies, like they're measuring something real, but they are really proxies for that user experience goal. I think I know that I have a tendency to do this. I think probably everybody has a tendency to do this. It's very easy to get into chasing the numbers in favor or without thinking about everything else, without the end result kind of being top of mind. You just want that number to be lower. But the number, yeah, it's not everything. It is important. It is critical. The stats show that there is a very clear correlation between speed and results, but they're not the end all and the be all. So the analogy that I kind of like to use is think about a dragster versus an F1 car versus a pickup truck, right? Like the dragster is going to be the fastest of those three, but you're not going to ask You're not going to try to take a drag car and throw it into a corner at, 100 miles an hour like you would an F1 car. And you're not going to ask either of those to go tow your camper for your weekend getaway. The performance that you need is different based on the situation, and that's kind of understood. And the end goal is that, that performance. What's the scenario? What are you trying to get? And what you're trying to get is the end user to get to the information that they need as quickly, as smoothly, and as completely as they can.
Yeah, I think we all know this, but it's important to say it again. I mean, my kids can clean their room fast, but then I opened that closet door and that performance wasn't quite what I was hoping it would be. So I think that is one of the key takeaways. Fast doesn't always mean good. But Core Web Vitals, it's more than speed, right?
It is. Yeah,
Okay.
there are three true metrics. Again, I think Core Web Vitals is similar to speed and performance. We tend to use that Core Web Vital or CWV. We tend to use that term to just mean, is it fast? And that's not, it's fine if everybody's talking the same language, but it's not accurate. Core Web Vitals in reality are a set of three metrics from Google, surfaced through their Crux or Chrome user experience reporting, which we'll talk about, shortly. Um, Three very specific metrics, and it is largest contentful paint or LCP, interaction to next paint or INP, and cumulative, hard word to say, layout shift or CLS. LCP, largest contentful paint, is a measure of how fast the largest, most important piece of content on the page loads in. So typically that's going to be, like your banner image or your hero image. It could be, the first vehicle if you're talking about like a catalog or an SRP page. Whatever that first piece of important content is, that triggers that LCP number. Your interaction to the next paint or INP is a measure of page responsiveness, right? So how quickly the page responds when the user does something on the page. So think about opening up a drop down on a filter, right? When you click that button to get that list, how long does it take for the browser to give you that list? I think we've all been on websites where you click the thing and it takes just long enough, you start to wonder, is this actually going to, oh, there it is, and it shows up. That would be a long INP or a bad INP experience. And then cumulative layout shift or CLS is just a measure of how much the page moves around when you load it. So again, I think we've all been on pages where the page loads, you see the button, you go to click it, and right as you're about to tap that thing, it moves because something else loads in below it or above it, and it moves it around on the page. That would be a bad CLS score. That's what you're trying to avoid. So a low CLS is what you're shooting for. You don't want things moving around. So that's Core Web Vitals. In order to pass a Core Web Vitals assessment there at the top, all three of these numbers have to be in that green section, and that is the green varies metric to metric, but 75% of the users to the page have to be in that green for that metric to pass. And then all three metrics have to be in the green for the overall to pass. So if one of them is off, if one of them is just slightly in the yellow, the CWV assessment there at the top will say failed. It doesn't mean the page is, slow or bad necessarily. It just means you're not passing in all three metrics.
And is it measured desktop versus mobile, just one large experience, or does it matter?
It is measured on both. So when you actually pull one of these up live, and we'll kind of talk through, all the intricacies of this reporting here in a second, but it is measured on both mobile and desktop, and it is at the page level. Now, there's again some nuance and intricacy there, but yeah, it is page by page. One page on your site can pass, another page can fail.
Got it. Is this it? Is this all we? Nope, there's more. Great.
Right. So there are two additional metrics that are presented by Google in the Crux data. So again, we'll talk briefly about what that is in a second. These are key metrics that are not included in that Core Web Vital pass-fail assessment, but they are important for the user experience to to understand what your users are seeing on the site. So first contentful paint, or FCP, is a measure of how long it takes the very first piece of content to show up. So typically that's going to be something like some text or a background image or something like that, literally anything. And then TTFB, or time to first byte, is a technical measure of how long it takes the server behind the request to reply to the browser, right? So as soon as you hit enter, how long does it take for all the communication to happen behind the scenes? Again, important, but do not directly impact that pass-fail. Okay, so we've talked a little bit already about Crux and about page speed insights. I want to talk a little bit more about that and why I personally think that Google's page speed insights tool is the best tool to use when you're having conversations around performance. So Google has a tool. It's pagespeed.web.dev. It's called Page Speed Insights, PSI. That you can take any URL across the internet, drop it in, hit go, and it will give you a performance report for that URL. That report is split into two sections. There's the Crux or real world data section at the top, and there's the synthetic data performance section at the bottom. So in my opinion, it's the best tool to use because it's Google's, right? And just like pretty much anything else in this industry, we're all in Google's world, and speaking Google's language puts us all on the same level. We're all talking the same thing. It is easy to go in and identify exactly how things are being measured. There are plenty of other tools out there, webpagetest.org, GTmetrix. There's tons out there, and they all do, a good job. They all do pretty much the same thing. But when you start kind of mixing tools, they may measure things slightly differently. It's just easier if everybody is using kind of the same dictionary when we're talking about this stuff.
Yeah, it's similar to why we use Google Analytics.
Exactly.
It's a universal language, and Google runs the world. We love you, Google, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are. We have a great question. How do I run this? And I know we've got a link here. This is pagespeed.web.dev. I'm going to type it here in the chat, but that's where anybody goes. Anybody can run this, right?
Yep, absolutely. And you can run it on literally any website, any page on the internet, yours, somebody else's, Walmart, whatever.
And you're going to talk about that here in a bit, where you mentioned already where each page can have a different pass fail, which is important to know. Okay.
Very important.
Perfect.
Yep. So just quickly to run through, actually, will you go back up one slide? Quickly to run through the difference between the two sections. The Crux data is real world data pulled from Chrome users using, visiting the page across a myriad of devices, network situations, desktop, mobile, wired, cellular, all the things. Google collects all of that data, again, real world Chrome users, and they surface it in that Crux section, that top section. That's what we were just looking at on the last two slides. It is the best picture of sort of a real world, scenario of what your users are seeing and what they're experiencing on the site. A couple of kind of key caveats there. It is a 28-day sort of rolling period. So if you go make a change on the site today and it improves the performance immediately, you won't see that showing up in Crux, immediately. It's going to take a little bit for that to start showing up because of that rolling window. And the other big thing to be aware of with the Crux data is Google has a threshold of traffic. And if the page isn't meeting that threshold, they will not surface this data. The mindset there is, we don't have enough information to say this is a representative sample size. And so we're not going to, put incomplete data out there. So that's Crux. The synthetic data, which is the second section, we'll look at that in a second, is moment to moment. So as soon as you hit go, there is an API that Google has called Lighthouse, which sits kind of behind Page Speed Insights, that goes and runs a simulated test on the page, and it simulates device, network situation, browser. It emulates all of those things to get you a picture of the performance on the page. So the synthetic data, you'll also see it called Lighthouse data, like I mentioned, or lab data across some of Google's stuff. That section is really good for moment-to-moment changes. If you do make a change today and you want to make sure it's, having an impact, you can see that pretty immediately. And good for kind of diagnosing issues. It gives you a whole list of things to look at, specific things that are taking longer than other things, issues that may stem from those things. But it is not always a great picture of what your real world users are seeing because of that emulation and that synthetic testing.
Well, I don't know if we've had enough, abbreviations and just letters in this. So I think on your next slide, you've got more of
I do. Yeah.
We should have maybe provided a glossary, although the entire deck is kind of a glossary for everybody. So, take us through some more. And synthetic data versus real world data. I know you just spoke to it, but is one is moment to moment, the synthetic data. Is that indicative of what you would see with the real world data, or are they completely different and separate at all times?
They are. So there's no overlap in the actual data, right?
Okay.
The Crux data, the real world, is coming in from anybody using Chrome to visit the page. The synthetic data is by the Lighthouse API that's testing it. Generally speaking, they should be somewhat in sync, but they will not always be in sync. And we'll see some very like clear examples of that in a minute. And there's a whole myriad of reasons. That's why this topic can get so technical and so nuanced so fast, is because there's just so much that can impact the scores, especially when you're talking synthetic, because they are emulating things. So what you're looking at here is the same site, same test as the Crux data we were looking at a moment ago. This is the synthetic data performance section. For the most part, the metrics are the same. So you have LCP, CLS, and FCP, which are the same as the Crux version of those metrics. So largest contentful paint, how fast the biggest thing takes, the most important thing takes. Layout shift is how much the layout shifts. That one's pretty easy. And then FCP, that first piece of content. Those are all the same. The two kind of different metrics are TBT, or total blocking time. This is a measure of long tasks as the browser is loading, which is a specific kind of technical thing. You can go dig into those definitions if you're interested. I'm not all that interested myself, but it is a technical thing. It is similar to Crux's INP metric, and it measures kind of the responsiveness of the page. How long is it taking the page to update when you interact with it? And then lastly is speed index, or SI. I actually personally don't really care for this metric too much. Google calls it a measure of overall visual completeness or smoothness. It's somewhere in between that first paint and that largest paint to, when the user thinks the page is loading, but maybe not done. It's a little too vague for me. I don't personally tend to use that one very much.
Okay. So real talk. I'm an overachiever. I'm the one who's doing the extra credit to make sure that I'm passing all the tests. Pass good, fail bad, right?
Generally speaking, yes. You want to pass, right? But I think, so if we move to the next slide, I have some real world examples which paint a really good picture of why you are not always going to pass, or why passing in one may not be the same as passing in the synthetic version. Passing at the top may not be passing on the bottom. So this is Walmart. I ran these tests middle of last week. You can see the dates there at the top. Walmart is failing across the board on the Core Web Vitals assessment. So those first three numbers, none of those are in the green. They're all in the yellow. Their performance score in the synthetic section down at the bottom is, what is that, a 56? Middling, it's okay. You go to walmart.com on your phone, it's not going to me, doesn't feel immediately slow. So failing. Could they improve? Yeah, definitely. Is it bad? Maybe. Maybe there's some low-hanging fruit they could pick to make this better. Maybe they have chosen to keep heavy things on the page because they're getting something out of it, right? If we look at the next one, the next example should be Amazon. So they're passing across the board. All of their metrics are in the green. I think their CLS is, what is that? Is like basically a 0. But if you look down at the synthetic section, they're actually 1 point lower than the Walmart example at a 56. They're at a 55. So the example, or the takeaway here is, you're not always going to be in line. They're real world users. Again, that top section, they're passing pretty much with flying colors here, but their synthetic results are kind of meh. Look at the LCP over on the bottom right is coming back as like a 6 something in synthetic testing, but it's very good on the Crux real world section. Again, just kind of due to the nuances of how this stuff is tested. Lastly, REI. Their metrics on the top section are actually the best of the set. All of their metrics are better than the other two, but you can see very clearly their performance number there is the worst of the three. Again, there's many reasons that could be. You can go drill down. I didn't personally drill down to see like what's causing that, but the difference between the real world and the synthetic can be pretty stark, even when the real world numbers look pretty good. And if we want to move on to the next, I went and grabbed a few of the tier 1 sites. So GM and Ford are up next. They're both kind of failing on at least one of the metrics. Here, this is the GM tier 1 site. You've got LCP, not great. The other two metrics are passing. Is a good example. One failure point fails that assessment, and their synthetic is a 39. If you move to the next one, I think it should be Ford, which is pretty similar. 2 metrics passing, 1 metric in the yellow, so failing. And then if you move down to the last one, this is Toyota. And similar to the last set, all 3 of their metrics are passing at the top. They are passing the Core Web Vitals assessment, but their synthetic number is the worst of the 3. this one was pretty clear to me when I was looking at it. Ford and GM have both made the choice to use a video background on their homepage. That's why you have the dude making the weird face on the Ford screenshot that I got because it was mid-video. And Toyota's using a still image. And those are always going to load faster, always, 100% of the time. But Ford and GM have made the choice because they, like the design decision of the video to, eat that extra load time to have that video. And that's fine. But the result is, a little bit lower page load.
Yeah, I love the real world examples. I think it makes perfect sense. It is decisions, and we're going to talk about that for the rest of the session. You can pass across the board. You can make changes and you're going to be green, green, green. But is that the best user experience? Before we move forward, Melinda has a question. If you had to pick crux or synthetic to be better, which one is better? Or is there a different way maybe we phrase that?
Yeah, no, if I am forced to choose between the two, you say pick one or pick the other, I am always going to pick Crux because Crux, again, is real world data. It is people using Chrome on their, on their phones, on their computers to visit the page. It's always going to be a clearer, more complete picture of what's happening out there in the wild. And I kind of touch on this slide, actually on the right. Personally, I find synthetic to be better for diagnosing issues. Are there things causing the slowdown that I can go find? I didn't show this in the screenshot, but if you go run one of these tests, you'll see in the synthetic section below the actual metrics and the scoring, there's a whole list of, this thing. It'll go down to like the specific, containers on the page or scripts being called in. It gives you a lot of detail that the Crux data doesn't give. But because it's not a real world picture, I'm going to pick Crux. Really use both, but Crux is the one I'm going to if I can only choose one.
Got it. And again, we've got the link here to test. We've got it hyperlinked several places. Great. Okay, you set the stage. I'm sort of with you. I get it. I understand the importance. I have my glossary now. I can look back at the words and remember what they all stand for. We're website providers for over 7,000, customers, and we will often get okay, here's my website. I see this score. Can you go ahead and fix it? It's all you, right? There's several players who impact this.
There are, yeah. In my view, there are kind of four key players when it comes to site speed or performance. See, I even did it on this slide. Same thing, not the same thing. But yeah, site speed kind of is impacted by four major players. One is the website platform. That's the foundation. You're only as, fast as your baseline. Two is program mandated content. I think we're all pretty aware of that. Things that have to be on the site because it's in one of the programs. Vendors and integration. So the kind of add-on tools that sit on top of that base platform. How those things are maintained, integrated with the site, all of that. And then lastly, the dealers and their agencies and the decisions that you're making around the website, right? Which vendors are you choosing? What design decisions are you making? Again, videos versus the still image. That's a great example. And then who are you, allowing or giving access to make changes on the site? And are they thinking about all of these things as well? I think I'll kind of run through a little bit more in depth what kind of each of those is responsible for. So your website provider, the platform, obviously responsible for the platform, the underlying architecture and framework. You can only go as fast as that baseline, right? Are they doing things like using a CDN, which pretty much everybody does now, but are they efficiently caching stuff? Are they using best practices with how they're rendering content on the page? Are they optimizing the content that they're delivering, right? Anything that's coming from the provider. Are they, using modern CSS and JavaScript, image and video optimizations, lazy loading where it's possible, calling JavaScript asynchronously, deferring whenever it's possible. There's a whole lot of, technical very quickly, but there are a whole lot of optimizations that the provider can make and should be making. And if they're not, they should be. And then lastly here for the integration piece, are they playing nice with the vendors, and are they examining what integrations are on the site and protecting the performance of the website, or are they just taking whatever, gets sent over and slapping it on? And that's a hard one, but that's also important.
It is. And the slapping it on method has been tried and true for years and years and years.
Yep.
I think we're going to talk about DealerOn's approach, I know, which, spoiler alert, is not slapping it on. But program mandates you talked about. And yes, these programs important. There's a lot of information. I know you've got this top bullet of analytics and tracking is the number one thing we see across the board, but what else is controllable here by the programs?
By the programs, I would say, all of it, but by the providers and by dealers, there's little option here. Maybe you have the ability to opt in or opt out of certain tools. Analytics, whether that's directly on the site or via a container, pretty much mandated. It is what it is. If you're seeing it cause drag, there are conversations to be had, but it's not like you can just pull these things off typically. And then marketing tools, things like the customer surveys, the EV widgets, things that are kind of bolted on, also typically run with JavaScript, may have an impact. Maybe there's an option to have that tool or not. Kind of, again, depends on the program. Next up are vendors and integrations, right? Again, those kind of add-on tools, the bolt-on tools. Those providers are going to be responsible for their code. So a lot of the platform stuff applies here too, right? Is that code high quality? Is it efficient? Is it using best practices, deferrals, asyncs, all those kind of things. But then a couple of additional things. One, compatibility. Are they checking with the website provider that what they're adding isn't going to cause some sort of breaking change? As an anecdotal example, I have absolutely seen a tool get added on. That script then calls its own version of a jQuery library that breaks all the functionality on the provider site because it's overriding the provider's, custom library that is critical to the site. Like those things can happen if people aren't talking, right? And there's the responsibility on both sides there. The vendors should have conversations with the provider, and the provider should be able to tell, hey, don't do this before something gets applied. But if those conversations don't happen, they're absolutely critical breaking changes that can happen when you just slap some code on a website.
And then dealers and agencies, which is most of you, you're in charge of this too. What you do impacts it. And, it's our job to help counsel you and have webinars like this to show you the right way. But some of these decisions have the biggest impact. You mentioned already video versus a static image, right? So what do dealers and agencies have to be aware of here?
Yep, I think, primarily a few big ones, design decisions at the top. And like I said before, maybe you choose to go with the video because you like it, and that's totally fine. But before you, settle on something, you should be asking the question either internally or of your provider. If I do this, am I going to see a drop in my performance? And then make that decision. Is it worth it? Likewise with partner and vendor selection, right? Not all of the tools out there are equally performant, and many things add up. So, browsers are being asked to do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And every time you add a tool, every time you add a script, every time you add a GTM container, every time you add any piece of content, you are asking a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more of the browser. And eventually, like no matter how performant any of those things is on its own, whether it's the platform or tool A or tool B or GTM container C, if you put everything on a page, you will have slow loads because you can't ask more than the browser can handle. And that leads immediately into the next one. One of the biggest things that we see is a lack of maybe knowledge or understanding or clarity on what is on a dealer's site at a given time. And that is one of the most important things that dealers and agencies can be aware of, knowing what tools are on the site, knowing what containers are on the site, and remembering to pull those things down whenever you cancel with, vendor A or provider B or whatever. If you are no longer using a tool or no longer, partnering with a vendor, and you don't remind your website provider, hey, we're not using these guys anymore, can you take the script off? That code is still on the site and it is causing performance drag all the time. Another fun anecdotal example, I once was called in to kind of troubleshoot why a site was breaking, and I found a script on the page that was kind of getting into an error loop essentially and running the browser totally out of resources. We did some digging. That company had been defunct for like 3 years, and the dealer had canceled with them like 6 years ago, but the code was still on the site because nobody had asked, nobody had thought to remove it. The providers don't always know when these things are being, canceled and need to be removed, and they add up over time.
Yeah. And this goes back to what is fast versus what is good. I mean, if you don't have accessibility is a great one. Having an accessibility tool on your website keeps you compliant and keeps you out of legal trouble, right? Taking it off would probably make your site faster. but the real world impact of that isn't something you're going to want to do. A trade-in tool, your service scheduler, all of these are going to impact site speed, but removing them has a bigger impact to your customers. So that's why this is a good conversation here. Now we know who's in charge. Now we know who's got to do what. The way that website providers approach this can be different across the board, and kind of the landscape of this website ecosystems, I think. So Angie, it's your turn here now. So take us through, there's a few different approaches to how providers might look at this, right?
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, Erin. So, tons of really good and nerdy detailed information from Admire, right? It's important to have that foundation so that as you evaluate your options, you can evaluate them with that concept in mind, that good doesn't always equal fast and fast doesn't always equal good. And there's a couple of approaches to these website ecosystems, as Erin was describing, that I want to orient us on first before we get into some practical application. So the first one is kind of what we're referring to as a walled garden. These are your providers that are kind of a jack of all trades, if you will. They're going to build and maintain a website platform, yes, but then they're also going to build native add-on products, things like a chat application, a digital retailing tool, a service scheduler, etc. These providers believe that third parties can weigh sites down and slow them down, and they just simply do not allow them to coexist on their websites. So this is an approach, but the question really to ask yourself here is, can your provider really do it all and do it all well? That's something really to consider for websites, ecosystems that have this approach. Now, the other approach is kind of this vacant lot, as we're calling it. So this is more of that do what you want. We talked about it a few moments ago, kind of just slapping code on a website. So these are going to be your providers that build and maintain a website platform only. They will allow third parties to coexist, which is good, but there's no structure or guidelines to how that code is being injected nor maintained. So if a website provider takes this approach, then they're not tending the garden, which means the garden needs to be tended, and the responsibility would fall entirely on you. And then last but certainly not least, and my personal favorite, is the best of both worlds. This is that tended garden. So this is a do what you want, but within these best practices approach. These are going to be website providers that build and maintain a website platform and offer some native add-on products like a digital retailing tool, like a chat application, but they also allow third parties to coexist on sites. And then they're providing consistent and structured options for where the third-party code gets injected and how it's maintained. This is really important, and for what it's worth, this is DealerOn's chosen approach to how we handle this as a website provider, because we believe it offers maximum flexibility. It allows you to meet your digital marketing strategy and your digital marketing goals, whether you use our platform with our native add-on products or somebody else's add-on products. And it provides that flexibility without sacrificing performance.
Yeah, which is important. Dealers have so many partners and vendors out there. And so it truly is calculating trade-off and what's important and the choices you want to make for your digital marketing experience. So I think you've got a few questions dealers can kind of ask themselves, or considerations as they are looking at not just their website provider, but more importantly, I think their partners and with third-party integrations.
That's right. Yeah. So I do want to make it clear that what we're trying to say here is that third-party code isn't bad. Sometimes it can, as we've discussed already, sometimes it does drag down a site. Sometimes too many of them drag down the site even more. But oftentimes third parties are a little bit of the scapegoat in the industry for the reason of a website's poor performance. And in many cases, they're falsely being accused of being the slowest of the bunch. And so just like we measure the ROI of a website and the ROI of digital advertising strategies, you can apply that same logic to calculating the ROI of the third-party partners you're choosing to work with. And you kind of break that down into a few buckets. So what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? Are you looking for more conversions, more leads? Are you looking for consumer data and using those insights to draw and make decisions going forward? Are you interested in improving the customer and the user experience? Are you isolating and measuring that third-party application's load time? And so that you can determine, is the load time cost worth the received value? And like Admire has said before, you know, in some cases, embedding that video is worth the cost because it looks cool on the website. In other cases, some of the load time cost of extra buttons on your your search results page or your vehicle details page are worth the cost of the slightly slower load time because you're receiving more leads or conversions from that partner.
I'm going to ask a real nerdy question.
I love those.
If your answer needs to be, I need to take that offline, that's acceptable. How do you isolate a third party's load time? Like, you know, is the cost worth the value? How do I see what that cost is?
Yes. So I would love the opportunity to answer this one live. I don't want to take it offline.
Oh, I'm impressed.
Yes. And I'm foreshadowing here a little bit because I'm going to show you a tool here in a few slides that can do that for you. But how you isolate and measure third-party applications. Now it's going to vary a little bit depending on who your website provider is, but your website provider is going to have some tips and tricks to be able to load your website with just one of your third-party scripts at a time. And then they can do some math to essentially say, how did your site load or how did the page load in that experiment? And then minus the baseline of the website performance and that page loading without any third parties on it. And then that's how we'll essentially be able to measure these third-party applications by themselves.
Perfect. I've got questions I'm saving for the future, knowing what you're talking about. So if you
Okay.
ask me a question, I'm not ignoring you. I'm saving it.
Yes, we've got lots of goodies. Don't worry. Okay, so another thing to look at, you want to audit your list of partners and costs. This goes back to what Admire was saying. We cannot tell you how many times, I mean, frankly, lost count of lots and lots of scripts and GTMs on a website that just aren't supposed to be there anymore because you're not working with that provider or that vendor anymore. So make a list of who you think should be on there. And having multiple third-party applications is okay. That's totally fine. Nobody's saying don't do that. But we in addition to measuring them on their own, we also need to measure them as a group. Are they all working well together? Are one or more of them affecting the performance of the overall site or another application? Admire used a couple of examples where earlier where both his team and my team got pulled into an escalation just this week where one third party was negatively impacting another third party, and it was the second one that was getting the blame. And so just having the conversation, being able to identify that, and then talk amongst the providers that are providing software and helping you with your digital footprint, that conversation is key to work through those things and be aware. And last but certainly not least, you want to set it, but do not forget it. So you want to make sure you're keeping your garden tended. Evaluate site performance and third-party code monthly at minimum. Website providers, third-party code providers, we're all releasing software constantly, and things can change. So making sure that you're on top of this and partnering with your providers is really, really key. And then reevaluating performance when you add, modify, or remove something. Just like Admire said, every piece of content, every third party, every GTM, all of it adds a little bit more. So you want to keep reevaluating. Do not set it and forget it. Set it and keep revisiting it.
Yeah, we've got a question, and Admire, I'm going to ask it to you. It's from Ben. I'm going to let you type an answer if you want to, but we've talked a lot about video content. So does video content via web widget slow site speed if it's housed like externally? So if it's a YouTube link, versus having the video embedded on your site. And that kind of goes to, I think about VDP videos, all of that stuff. But does it matter where it's housed?
Yeah, it does. And I was typing up an answer and kind of figuring out how I wanted to say this. But generally speaking, if you are linking out, somewhere, if you're linking to the YouTube page, it will have almost no impact. If you are embedding the YouTube video on a page, that requires the whole player, right, to be loaded in when the page loads, that will have a large impact. And it's actually something the YouTube player is not very efficient, and I'll leave it at that. On the VDP, it also kind of depends, right? How is that video getting onto the page? Is it coming in through the inventory feed and getting added natively through the platforms, however they handle videos through the website provider, or is it being added, with a JavaScript widget and either taking over the gallery or injecting that video somewhere into the native gallery? That's typically going to be slower, more impactful on performance.
Yeah, be careful saying mean things about YouTube. We already
I
told
know.
Google we really like you. We're
It's
fans.
dangerous.
All right.
We're just out here making friends.
Just
I will say though, just to piggyback on what Admire said, one of the going back to the website ecosystem and that tended garden, that bucket 3 that we just talked through, those types of website providers are thinking about when a video is being embedded, especially like a video that's specific to a VIN on a VDP. And they're loading it in such a way to minimize impact. That's oftentimes why you see a second gallery tab, for instance, on the VDP. And so it may not load initially with the page, but when the consumer goes to click on the tab, then that's when loading happens. So there's things like that can also help when you're working with website providers kind of in that tended garden belief.
So we have mentioned it a few times, but danced around the elephant in the room, which is Google Tag Manager, GTMs, which from my POV and the limited deep knowledge that I have, that's the biggest culprit when it comes to site performance, or can be. So
it certainly can be.
Yeah, talk to us about this. I have a question or two saved, but what do we care about here?
Yeah. So it certainly can be in some ways. This one can be a scapegoat, and in not all cases, but in a lot of cases, it's rightfully said. The thing here, though, is, and you can have a lot of things going on in a Google Tag Manager and several GTM containers as well on a website. But in some ways, Google Tag Managers are there for analytical reasons. They're a pixel tag that's collecting data. In other cases, people are inserting third-party code into Google Tag Managers, which is probably one of the worst things to do, honestly, from a performance perspective. It's much, much better to add that third-party code directly on the website as opposed to through a GTM. And then you might also have other GTMs that are doing kind of a combination of both. So it's really important that you're aware of how many you have and who owns them. Are they doing what you're expecting them to be doing? Are they providing you value? Are there some left over from an agency thrice removed? You know what I mean? And then using site performance testing tools to be able to drill down and measure the performance impact of each of them so that you can evaluate and choose which ones stay and then choose which ones go. And again, don't set it and forget it. This is something on a regular cadence to be looking at and evaluating.
Yeah, and things to remember there are GTMs that cannot come off the website.
Right.
Program mandate, that's why we talked about it. Program, website providers probably have some. But a question that I had been saving is, so is there one answer? Like, do we suggest combining all GTMs currently on the website pages into one GTM controlled by the dealer? Is that possible? Or is it just kind of leave it and keep an eye on it?
I mean, that is possible. It's a little bit of a personal preference, honestly. So there's going to be Google Tag Managers containers that the website provider is controlling. There's ones that the OEM is putting on there. So those are a couple of examples of ones that can't be moved or can't be consolidated with something else. You can also have one's your own GTM that you ask to be on the site, as well as any agencies that you work with likely are going to want a GTM on the site too. So you can, it would be a personal preference if you want to consolidate everything. And then the trick in that instance is you're just going to have to manage who has access to your GTM to either edit it directly and publish the changes, and how much are you trusting other people to do that? Because if they make a boo-boo, it could cause something catastrophic. And so that's one reason a little bit why there's multiple GTMs, is because of the ownership of them and who can edit and publish the changes. So I'd say it's more of a personal preference of how you want to do that and work with your various partners if you're going to consolidate into one.
Yeah, consolidating into one, all I can picture is the dolls, where it starts with the big doll and then the
Nesting
smaller
dolls.
Yes, that makes me nervous, but and you permissions, I think, is the biggest factor in that. So
Yeah.
it's a good point. So you control it, but then you've got to give access to everybody. So lots about GTMs. Ask your website provider. I think that's a big one. They should support you in this. And I know we're going to talk tools. So I like to give homework. I think you've got some suggestions here on where to start. So this is your homework page, everybody.
Yes, this is lots of really juicy homework, and you know, from a practical application perspective, evaluating your website provider and your third-party code providers for their performance. And here on the left-hand side, there's a few ideas for consideration. You know, getting familiar with your CWV scores, using large images in moderation, making a design decision about embedded videos or not. Evaluating your third-party code ROI regularly, use native platform buttons as much as possible, and then link to those third-party apps. Balance good with fast. There isn't a black and white, you're right or wrong here, right? There's going to be decisions you make, and what's acceptable to you is okay, from a how many third parties you have and what the score of your CWV is because of that. There's no right or wrong. There's just figuring out what makes sense for you and is achieving your goals from a digital strategy point of view. Like I said before, make a list of who you've got on your website. Use that PageSpeed Insights testing tool that Admire shared in the beginning. Test performance on core pages at the very least: homepage, search results, vehicle details, service, finance, and expect scores to change over time. Failing fast is totally okay here. Also through the lens of, remember, Google's 28-day rolling period. So even if you change it today and don't see an impact tomorrow, it doesn't mean you didn't do it right. It just means Google's gathering data and is waiting for statistical significance to show you how it modified the score.
Well, and expect scores to change, but expect scores to be significantly different across the different pages on your site.
Yes.
SRP and a VDP is not going to have the same Core Web Vitals results as your homepage. And I wouldn't want it to. You think of all the inventory, all the images, video, a 360 spins, all of the tools you have. It is going to be different. So we've talked about testing the core pages, which is important. Don't think if somebody or your agency or one of your partners gives you, oh, here's your Core Web Vitals, you're doing good. I tested it. Here's the one, you're good. If they tested the homepage, you're not done. Do the work, go through things, and that's critical. So just understand, if your SRP says one thing and your service page says another, that's normal, and it should.
Yep, exactly, because it's a different amount of content that the page is having to load. Last and certainly not least, I mean, ask your third-party application providers what they're doing to minimize a negative impact on site performance, and listen for platform updates from your website provider too. Like Admire said, website providers, just like DealerOn and all the others, should be looking at their own platform to elevate the baseline as much as they can, because that's the foundation of what the scores are going to be based from. So this slide has a lot of charts and graphs, but it's meant to show you just what DealerOn's been up to here recently and how we're trying to elevate that baseline for everybody with a DealerOn website. So in mid-August, and I'll direct your attention to the chart here in the top left, with the layout shift. This is CLS, and what we're looking at here is the homepage on desktop. We started occupying space for that homepage banner based on how much space we knew it was going to take up. And by doing that, we saw more than 80% of our websites, you can see this green bar shot up and are now passing CLS because of that one change that we made. Likewise for interaction to next paint or IMP, this is the homepage, but on mobile. What we did in late August is we enabled proxy events on the network, which is allowing more efficient loading of backend scripts. So this specifically targeted our tagging scripts, which led to a huge improvement in IMP on home pages for mobile, as well as search results pages for both desktop and this first graph, and then mobile here in this second one. So you can just see how much the green line is shooting up and the yellow and red lines are coming down, which now be aware though, if you run a site speed test using that page speed insights tool and you don't see numbers like this for CLS and INP, it doesn't mean that what DealerOn didn't work for your website. It just means that we're getting to the end of that 28-day rolling period. So if it doesn't look like these yet, it should soon, because we need to wait for that 28-day lag from Google to pass us by. We've got a whole bunch of things that the team's focusing on next as well. So just like we're asking you to not set it and forget it, we follow are drinking our own medicine as well, as they say. So we're also looking at the SRP next and how elements load. We're going to be looking at bundle sizes, a more efficient pass-to approach. Filter interactions are also being studied. And then at the platform level, we're looking to split bot versus consumer traffic so that it will lessen the resource costs on our servers and speed up processing time across all events.
Those are some nerdy charts, but they are pretty. All right. You all might not be thinking about NADA yet, but we sure are. And Angie's going to be brave and switch out of the PowerPoint deck here into a live demo of a sneak peek. You, few hundred of my closest friends, are going to see what Angie is going to be talking about and what we're going to have available here for our DealerOn dealers. So take us through what you did that seamlessly, I must say.
I'm trying.
I have full confidence in everything. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm just gonna blow past the slide completely and just get to the really sexy part, which is a live demo itself. So this is, as Erin said, something we're going to be unveiling at NADA 2026 in February. We are really excited about it. This is the Performance Impact Report. So this is looking at your Core Web Vitals scores, both Crux and synthetic, because they are important, even if we like Crux slightly better, but they're both equally important, through the lens of third-party scripts on your website and GTM containers on your website to help you have all this information in one place, because it's a lot of information. And while it's available today, it's scattered everywhere across the internet. And B, so that you can use this to start conversations with the partners and the providers that you're working with. So up at the top, we can filter by desktop and mobile. We can filter by all core pages, or we can just look at one page at a time. And obviously we've got a date range that's going to stay sticky as I scroll down. I'm going to see things like how many third-party scripts are installed and some insights to say whether that's below or above average or right on track. This performance score is the synthetic score, just like what you were seeing in the example reports earlier. And then some key performance indicators. So LCP, INP, and CLS are, remember what Google says, pass or fail a Core Web Vitals test. But we're also including the other ones in here too, like FCP, TTFB, and a couple others with obviously an overall. So then we'll also break this out for you with the three main Core Web Vitals metrics. And then we're going to show you the performance score with TPI additions. So you can see what the scores were across the various metrics, and then when third-party integrations were added. so that you can start to see the trend lines of what did that do to your overall performance. We'll show you a chart of all the third parties that are on the website right now, and the performance impact of each. Is it a low impact, which awesome. Is it a medium impact, which could still be awesome, but these might be the ones to look at and have that conversation with those providers, and then evaluate that ROI, right, that we've been talking about. Is having this thing on the website still worth it to you, despite it having a medium impact on the overall load? You can sort these. You can see who our DealerOn trusted partners are. These are the ones that really go to town with us and have a full-on integration, and they meet our standards in terms of cybersecurity, accessibility, ASC tagging, and site speed. And then last but certainly not least is our GTM container section. This one's dummy data right now, so don't worry about that. But this is going to tell you how many GTMs you have on your website, who owns them. A brief description we'll be adding over time of what's inside them, each GTM, what's it supposed to be doing. And then we're still working through this with my engineering team, but this same performance indicator bar you're going to see right here. So we'll tell you how much time that's adding to the overall load time of the website, what it's doing from a performance perspective.
Yes, you are getting accolades in the Q&A. This is a great dashboard. This is awesome.
Love it.
So too, we're real excited. So I think starting now on next month's webinar, I'll start taking appointments for NADA so that we can have your own
Let's do it.
personal information ready. This is awesome. And then this,
Yeah, I know we're cutting close on time, but
Yep.
let me talk through this one really fast. So this one is our scorecard report. This is going to tell you all the third-party scripts that are across DealerOn websites. Remember, DealerOn has 7,000 dealer websites and counting, right? We're like one of the largest providers in the automotive industry. So this is all the third-party scripts that are on DealerOn websites. And then we're scoring them in terms of their core web vitals, desktop and mobile, accessibility, security, and their mobile UX, who's a trusted partner, and then an overall grade. So this data isn't going to be specific to your website, but it's meant as a conversation starter to say, I need a new chat provider. Let me go check this out. Who's scoring really, really well? Show me all the, well, nobody's an A+, but hey, this analytics provider is getting an A. So you can score these, you can check out, score them by category, and then you can even look at who's DealerOn trusted and make some decisions here. Again, all conversation starters, all meant to help pepper you with information so you can make data-driven decisions to really help calculate those ROIs and evaluate the choices that you have in achieving your digital strategy goals.
Fantastic. Angie, so great. I'm going to have you click back to the deck here for the last 2 minutes. And let me see, I'm just getting I got to get this is amazing, notes out of my Q&A. So we've talked a lot about how we partner with vendors and how we are attended garden. On Marketplace, this is where I'm going to let you're going to do it much more justice than I am. But we partner with hundreds of vendors out there who you are all working with and who you want their stuff on your website. So talk a little about On Marketplace and how we tend the garden and how we allow dealers, as we should, as anybody should, to partner with who they want to, but also help protect their site speed and performance.
That's right. Yeah. This is the epitome of attended garden. So with DealerOn, when you have a DealerOn website, you have access to our app store. We've got over 60 apps in there across 13 different categories. You can filter by trending, which are popular apps. You can filter by recently added apps if you want to be a trendsetter. You can easily add apps to your DealerOn website in near real time. It's choosing the app you want, clicking an install button, giving us a little bit of your information like first, last, and email. Approving that we, as your website provider, can add that script to your website, and you click a submit button, and then it'll be done for you by either a DealerOn support representative or a partner themselves in many cases as well. So we're seeing a 23% faster resolution time because of this platform, that means your ask of adding somebody's script to your DealerOn website is getting on the site 23% faster than it used to before.
Awesome. Amazing. Angie, Admire, thank you both so much. Yes, this is our logo soup of all of our partners. Hey, if you are a vendor and you're not on this list, what the heck are you doing? Reach out, webinars@dealeron.com, and we will get you on our list. Everybody, thank you so much. We are right at time. Excellent work. If you've got questions, go ahead and email me, webinars@dealeron.com, and we will see everybody next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.